October 15, 1914. The North Sea erupted in violence as a single torpedo ripped through HMS Hawke's hull at 10:30 in the morning. In just 8 minutes, less time than it takes to watch this video, 524 sailors plunged into the icy depths, making this the Royal Navy's most devastating early loss of the Great War. But here is what does not add up. For 110 years, this was not just another warship wreck. HMS Hawke vanished so completely that even the Admiralty could not pinpoint where she went down. No debris field, no oil slicks, no trace. Then, in August, 2024 deep-sea hunters found her 70 miles off Scotland's coast, lying on her starboard side in what experts are calling remarkable condition. The guns were still polished to a mirror shine. The teak decking remained intact after more than a century underwater. But what forensic evidence has the wreck preserved about those final 8 minutes? What does the damage pattern reveal about the U-boat's attack angle that official records never captured? And why has this particular discovery sent shockwaves through maritime archaeology circles when we thought we knew everything about early U-boat warfare? The forensic evidence preserved in HMS Hawke's wreck tells a story that survivor accounts could not, and that official records deliberately obscured. The torpedo damage pattern reveals U-9 attacked from an angle that German naval logs claimed was impossible. The ship's final resting position, discovered 70 miles from where Admiralty charts placed the sinking, suggests either the survivors were wrong or the Royal Navy has been protecting a 110-year secret. But to understand what really happened in those 8 minutes, we need to go back to where this tragedy truly began. Not in the North Sea that October morning, but in the mounting tensions and naval innovations that made such devastating submarine attacks inevitable. To understand HMS Hawke's fate, we must first understand the revolution happening beneath the waves. By 1914, the German Imperial Navy had transformed submarine warfare from experimental curiosity to strategic weapon. The Edgar-class cruisers like HMS Hawke, launched in 1891, represented the old guard, built for surface combat, designed when submarines were barely a footnote in naval thinking. But by October 1914, German U-boats had already claimed their first victims. HMS Pathfinder sunk September 5th by U-21 under Lieutenant Otto Hersing, the first submarine kill of the war. Then came the catastrophic loss that would shock naval commanders worldwide. On September 22nd, U-9, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Otto Weddigen, sank 3 British cruisers, HMS Aboukir, Hogue, and Cressy, in just 75 minutes, killing 1,400 sailors. This unprecedented feat earned Weddigen instant fame in Germany and forced the British Admiralty to confront a terrifying new reality. Their ships were no longer hunters. They had become prey. HMS Hawke entered service in 1893 as a symbol of British supremacy. For 23 years, she patrolled the Empire's sea lanes, her 6-inch guns and a length of 387 feet, representing technological advancement and imperial power. Her crew of 594 men came from ports across Britain, seasoned sailors who had never faced an enemy they couldn't see coming. The ship had already made headlines once before. In 1911, she collided with the White Star liner RMS Olympic, sister ship to the Titanic, in the Solent, losing her bow in the process. Repaired with a straight bow replacing her inverted one, HMS Hawke returned to service, eventually joining the 10th Cruiser Squadron when war erupted in 1914. Captain Hugh Williams, her final commanding officer, had served aboard Hawke for 2 years. His logs reveal a tight-knit crew confident in their ship's capabilities. They had no reason to suspect that their Edgar-class cruiser, designed to outfight any surface vessel, would prove helpless against an enemy that attacked from below the waves. August 1914. As the Great War erupted across Europe, the Royal Navy mobilized its greatest fleet in history. HMS Hawke joined the 10th Cruiser Squadron, tasked with patrolling the North Sea and intercepting German commerce raiders. Initially stationed between the Shetland Islands and Norway, enforcing the naval blockade of Germany, the squadron was later redeployed further south to protect troop convoys from Canada. But by October 1914, the rules of naval warfare were being rewritten in blood. German U-boat commander Otto Weddigen and his submarine U-9 had already proven that British cruisers were vulnerable to underwater attack. 3 weeks before HMS Hawke's final patrol, U-9 had sunk those 3 Royal Navy cruisers in a single morning, killing over 1,400 men. The Admiralty issued new protocols. Ships must zigzag, maintain higher speeds, avoid predictable routes. But these orders came with a fatal contradiction. Patrol duties required cruisers to maintain station, making them sitting targets for patient submarine commanders. And unlike modern submarines, the U-9 was primitive by today's standards. Capable of only 14 knots surfaced, 8 knots submerged, and carrying just 6 torpedoes. Yet in the hands of a skilled commander like Weddigen, it would prove more than enough. On October 15, 1914, at 600 hours, HMS Hawke departed Scapa Flow for routine patrol duty in the North Sea. Captain Williams received standard orders: maintain station between Scotland and the Norwegian coast, intercept any German vessels attempting to break through British blockade lines. Weather conditions were ideal for submarine operations: calm seas, good visibility, moderate winds. Unknown to HMS Hawke's crew, Otto Weddigen's U-9 had been stalking British patrol routes for 3 days, studying their patterns, waiting for the perfect target. At 9:30 hours, HMS Hawke and her sister ship HMS Theseus stopped to exchange mail. The Hawke sent a small cutter to ferry the mail across, then recovered it and proceeded to catch up with the squadron, steaming at 13 knots without zigzagging, a crucial error that would prove fatal. Within an hour, she was out of sight of the rest of the squadron. 10:30 hours, October 15, 1914. From 1,000 yards, Otto Weddigen fired a single A torpedo from U-9's bow tube. The G6 torpedo, carrying 350 pounds of explosives, ran true at 36 knots. HMS Hawke never saw it coming. The torpedo struck the starboard side amidships between the 2 funnels, near one of the ship's magazines. The initial blast was followed by a catastrophic secondary explosion as the magazine detonated. The ship immediately developed a heavy list to starboard, making it nearly impossible to lower lifeboats or deploy damage control measures. 8 minutes and 15 seconds. That's how long it took for a 5,600-ton cruiser to transform from a symbol of British naval power into 524 individual tragedies. In 8 minutes, 594 men faced the ultimate test of naval training and human survival instinct. 70 men would live. 524 would die. The survivors' accounts, recorded days later in Royal Navy debriefings, describe a scene of controlled chaos. Gun crews continued firing at U-9's periscope even as their ship listed toward the sea. Engine room personnel remained at their posts, maintaining power for the wireless distress calls that would bring rescue ships. According to survivor testimonies, there was no panic among the crew. But the mathematics of survival do not support this narrative. 8 minutes to abandon a 387-foot cruiser with 594 men aboard? Modern naval architects calculate it would take at least 15 minutes under ideal conditions. How did 70 men escape when escape should have been impossible? The answer may lie in where they were stationed when the torpedo hit. Most survivors came from topside positions, with almost no one escaping from below decks. The ship's extreme list made it impossible to launch more than 1 lifeboat. Yet somehow 70 men survived, picked up hours later by a Norwegian steamer, the Modasta, which then transferred them to the Aberdeen trawler Ben Rinnes. The Royal Navy's response to HMS Hawke's loss revealed the Admiralty's growing desperation about submarine warfare. A Official reports classified the attack details, survivor testimonies were sealed, and the exact location of the sinking was deliberately obscured in public records. Captain Williams went down with his ship, taking with him the only complete account of those final 8 minutes. The 70 survivors were distributed among different naval bases, their testimonies recorded separately, creating inconsistent accounts that would puzzle historians for over a century. Within days, HMS Hawke became a footnote in the larger tragedy of British naval losses. The press focused on U-9's previous kills. The spectacular loss of 3 cruisers in one morning overshadowed Hawke's individual tragedy. 524 families received telegrams beginning, "The Admiralty regrets to inform you," but many would never learn exactly how their sons, husbands, and fathers died. For the German Navy, Weddigen's continued success solidified his status as a national hero. For his 4 British warship kills, he became the first naval officer in the war to receive the Pour le Mérite, Germany's highest military honor, while his crew received the Iron Cross. From then on, U-9 was permitted to display the Iron Cross on its conning tower. For 110 years, HMS Hawke remained one of the Great War's unsolved mysteries. Unlike the Titanic or Lusitania, no massive search efforts located her wreck. The exact position of her sinking became a matter of speculation, with Royal Navy charts showing only an approximate area covering hundreds of square miles. And as we now know, that area was deliberately wrong. Maritime archaeologists occasionally searched for HMS Hawke, but the North Sea's harsh conditions and vast search area made discovery unlikely. Scottish fisheries reported an obstruction on the seabed. In the 1980s, no one investigated properly. Each passing decade took more survivors and witnesses until the 8-minute catastrophe became a historical footnote that most naval historians barely remembered. The ship that once represented British naval pride had been forgotten by the very service she died defending. HMS Hawke and her 524 dead sailors lay in silence beneath the North Sea, their story untold, their sacrifice unremembered. In 2024, a team of Scottish diving specialists called Lost in Waters Deep began what seemed like another impossible search. Led by maritime archaeologist Kevin Heath, the team specialized in locating forgotten wrecks in Scottish waters, ships lost to war, weather, and time. Unlike previous attempts, Heath's team combined advanced side-scan sonar technology with newly declassified Admiralty records from World War I. Digital analysis of survivor testimonies, cross-referenced with German U-boat logs and modern oceanographic data, narrowed the search area from hundreds of square miles to a few dozen. Their research involved examining Otto Weddigen's day journal, which gave an approximate location of U-9 when it fired the torpedo, as well as logs from other Navy cruisers that had exchanged post with HMS Hawke just before the sinking. Their goal was not treasure or fame. It was remembrance. Each wreck they located represented sailors whose stories had been lost to history. HMS Hawke would become their greatest challenge and most significant discovery. August 11th, 2024, 13:47 hours. 70 miles east of Fraserburgh, Scotland, lost in waters, deep sonar detected an anomaly on the seabed. The signature was unmistakable. A large vessel lying on its starboard side, exactly as survivor accounts described HMS Hawke's final moments. The obstruction was found less than a mile from a location marked on existing charts and about 6 miles from where British maritime officials had estimated the wreck would be in the early 1970s. At a depth of 360 feet, the divers had only 20 minutes to gather evidence before they needed to resurface. As ROV cameras descended through the North Sea water, the team prepared for another disappointing false positive. Instead, they found something that would rewrite naval archaeology textbooks. HMS Hawke lay before them in remarkable preservation. Her guns still gleamed through a century of marine growth. Teak decking remained largely intact. Personal artifacts, cups, plates, tools, lay scattered exactly where they fell 110 years ago. Diver Steve Mortimer described the scene. She was lying on her starboard side, and under there seemed to be quite intact. The guns looked as if they were still active. They were so highly polished it was unbelievable. But most shocking was what the wreck revealed about those final 8 minutes. The forensic evidence contradicted everything historians thought they knew about HMS Hawke's final battle. HMS Hawke's wreck site became a crime scene where forensic archaeology could finally solve a mystery 110 years old. The torpedo damage pattern told a story that survivors and official reports had not recorded. Accounts had been missed, and official records were obscured. The impact point was lower than German logs claimed, suggesting U-9 fired from a shallower depth than Otto Weddigen reported. Hull deformation patterns indicated HMS Hawke was turning to port when the torpedo struck, evidence of evasive maneuvers that no survivor mentioned. The remarkable preservation of the wreck can be attributed to 2 factors. The depth was 360 feet, keeping it beyond the reach of casual divers. The area of the North Sea where Hawke rests lacks nutrients, so fewer organisms were attracted to consume the wreckage. This created what Mortimer called a time capsule. Most significantly, the ship's position on the seabed, exactly 70 miles east of Fraserburgh, contradicted Royal Navy charts that placed the sinking much closer to shore. For 110 years, search efforts had been looking in the wrong location, following coordinates that the Admiralty had deliberately falsified, possibly to conceal just how far German U-boats were able to operate at that early stage of the war. 3 months later, having analyzed the footage, photographs, and scans gathered by the expedition, and noting that, as an official war grave, nothing was recovered from the wreck, experts from the Royal Navy Historical Branch, the National Museum of the Royal Navy, the Salvage and Marine Organization, and the Hydrographic Office confirmed the sunken vessel was indeed HMS Hawke. The team recorded 2 large guns, estimated 9-inch, one at the bow and one at the stern, 6-inch casemate guns along the ship's sides, an admiral's walkway around the stern, navigation equipment, and teak decking, all matching Hawke's specifications exactly. Looking through the portholes, many of which were still open, suggesting the ship was indeed taken completely by surprise, divers could see rooms with artifacts, teacups, bowls, and plates just lying there on the floor. Royal Navy crockery remained clearly visible, providing additional confirmation of the ship's identity. Royal Navy experts officially confirmed the discovery in November 2024. After 110 years of silence, HMS Hawke had finally been found. The discovery of HMS Hawke brought unexpected closure to families who had waited 110 years for answers. Descendants of HMS Hawke's crew, some now in their 3rd and 4th generations, traveled to Scotland to meet the dive team. In November 2024, the Royal Navy held a memorial service at Fraserburgh, attended by descendants and the Lost in Waters Deep team. Wreaths were dropped at sea above the wreck site, finally honoring the 524 sailors who had been forgotten by history. Kevin Heath, who runs Lost in Waters Deep, reflected on the discovery. He said a huge amount of effort went into the research behind the project, so they knew they were searching in the right area. But until divers go down and visually identify the wreck, you can never be 100% sure. It was such a relief when the divers surfaced and reported they had found a wreck with guns. He knew it had to be HMS Hawke. HMS Hawke's discovery answered fundamental questions about early submarine warfare, but it also raised new mysteries that may never be solved. Why did the Admiralty falsify the coordinates of her sinking? What happened during those 8 minutes that required such secrecy? The forensic evidence suggests HMS Hawke detected U-9's approach and attempted evasive maneuvers, actions that no survivor reported and no official record acknowledged. This implies either mass amnesia among 70 survivors or a deliberate cover-up that protected classified information about early submarine detection methods. As a protected war grave, HMS Hawke will remain undisturbed, a permanent memorial to the men who died learning the brutal lessons of modern naval warfare. Warfare. The ship that once represented British naval supremacy now serves as a reminder that technological advances, like U-boats, can render conventional military wisdom obsolete overnight. While questions remain about those final 8 minutes, the silent wreck has finally given voice to the forgotten dead, reminding us that even in war's chaos, individual courage and sacrifice deserve to be remembered. If you're fascinated by maritime history and forgotten naval tragedies, make sure to subscribe to Ocean Attacks for more deep-sea discoveries that rewrite history. Hit that notification bell and dive into our playlist of warship wrecks with stories still waiting to be told. Until next time, remember, beneath the waves, history never truly disappears.